I was still writing books for the Navy, and I have been a painter all my life, so I was still doing that in the evening. But it was a messy time of my life, and I was at that time painting very controlled wooden duck decoys. And so it was, I think, I was getting control of my life by doing this very precise painting. And in 1981, I married into the military moving around tradition, and we
You make
moved
it sound
up.
like a bad thing.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing. It's a very good thing. That's Jim, my husband, for those of you who haven't been introduced. But anyway, we were living first at West Point, and that was really Ginny Buyer territory. The local quilt shops were full of Ginny Buyer fabrics, and we all learned to piece very precisely and match points and all of that. And then in 1984, I moved to California, and everything was possible. I remember driving to Big Sur, which this piece is the first quilt I ever made, intending it to be an art quilt. And this is about a drive to Big Sur. It's two-sided. This side is about going down in the morning when the fog is obscuring the mountains and bleaching out all the colors. The other side is the afternoon when the sun hits the mountains and the grasses and the trees, and it's the yellow color. I felt it was so arty because it was, all the fabrics started with commercial fabrics, and I did something to them. They're bleached, they're over-dyed, some of them are over-painted, and every fabric on there is, I think there may be one or two. This may be the original piece. There aren't many fabrics in there. There are only about 4 or 5. This may be an original piece, and maybe that blue, but by using different discharge methods and things like that, I was so excited to be mucking around again with things and not just buying a piece of fabric, cutting it into pieces, and sewing it together. And at that time, I mean, you can see that if you know Emiko Loeb's work, I admired her work very much, and that was why I tried to do this, and I never tried it again. It'll drive you nuts. I ended up, after trial and error, discovering that it is in order to make the lines that cross over the individual, those are log cabin, I think those are log cabin blocks, or maybe they're courthouse steps. No, they're log cabin. To make the back and the front work and have the lines of the mountains and the blocks of the trees on the back work, I had to actually take a piece of paper and draw out a log cabin on one side, draw out a log cabin on the other, color them and put them together, and then throw them out as they didn't work. So I actually had a complete paper plan. But anyway, this was very freeing, and the drive to Big Sur for a girl from the East Coast, and to go down there, and you're on these immense mountains, bigger mountains than I'd ever seen, and there's no guardrail. And this was so different than the way I'd been brought up, and it was so different philosophically to what the quilters there were doing. I studied with Joan out there. I studied with Yvonne Porcella out there. Oh, help me, Joan, the lady with the red glasses. Jean Ray Laurie. Yeah, studied with Jean Ray. So many of the people out there, and it opened a lot of doors, a lot of mental space. Then we started moving again, and in '88 we moved to Korea. And we were only there for 2 years, but to go to a situation where things are so different, you become an observer. And I think that was when it also helped for me to isolate myself, because I can see in my quilts from the California days, the 4 years I was there, and then we were there again 18 months again in the mid-90s. But the initial 4 years, I really was able to free up, but I never completely got out from under the influence of the people I was studying with. Got to Korea, and there were no teachers, and so I was teaching myself. And at that point, I realized, well, I just want to do what I want to do. And so I started, these are much later because I was actually a juror in 2000 for the 2013 show. So this piece is 2012, but there's an awful lot in between this piece and this piece that you're not seeing. There was, for about 10 years, I worked in colors like what you see, because that's in the 90s, that's what we dyed, that's what we got in the shops. And then I started working with, I went back to discharge. I hadn't done much, which is effectively bleaching or using other chemicals to take color away. I went back to it based on some of the time that I had been working on this piece, but I was doing single color cloth, black cloth. I tried other colors, but black always worked the best. And so my color was getting more and more monochromatic. It was either black and orange or black and pink or black and white. And then I realized, well, in '90 we moved to Belgium. And I was still working in bright colors then, but I was getting away from them around 2000. I started going back into the discharge work. And I met Wendy Hunn, whose work is up the other end. And Wendy taught me to silkscreen with acrylic paints. I had learned to silkscreen in college. It was a process I never wanted to go back to because it was chemicals, it was solvents, it was dangerous, it was a pain in the neck. Wendy's sitting there, you know, slap, slap, slap. And it was eye-opening. I was in a 4-day workshop with her. I couldn't tell you what else she taught. And she teaches a lot in her workshops. But anyway, so I started screen printing, which is what these figures are. And I wasn't initially doing figures, although there is one woman, but I was learning a lot about printing positives and negatives and using multiple screens and things, and I was doing my experimenting in the silk screen process in the early 2000s. And about 2004, I was in Berlin, another trip that I was lucky to take because of Jim's assignment.
Terrible military assignment.
That's right. And I was walking along taking pictures that they have in former East Berlin. They have colored pipes that stick up out of the ground. Blue is water, pink is steam, and purple is something else. And I was taking pictures of these, and this wonderful old woman walked into my screen. And I got home and I looked at that, into my viewfinder. And when I got home and looked at that photograph, I thought, she is wonderful, what can I do with her? And so I started using her image on my computer and altering it to make screens from it. And at the same time, I started journaling about her and giving her a character and a history that I was making up, but based on what I was seeing in her and where she was. I worked with her for a year or two, and I started adding other characters. And my work up until 2 or 3 years ago almost always had figures in it. I was